All right, dear friends. Good evening, l'chaim, l'chaim. Let's all make a toast for another night of learning Tanya, and for finishing chapter 37 tonight. That's a big one. It's a big one because we're finishing a topic, a big topic. This is the final installment, the final part of the final chapter of one of the biggest ideas of all of Jewish philosophy, of Jewish spirituality, and really to understand Judaism. You can't understand Judaism if you don't have this topic in Tanya, the topic of the purpose. Why are we here? These are the chapters. We started it with chapter 35, but these are the chapters that explain our purpose here on earth, why we're here, why the world's here, what's the purpose, how do we make it happen? And what we learned is that God made the world to be a world where God is completely hidden, and then God put us, special holy souls, to enter into this space, a very unnatural habitat, the habitat of the world, the physical world, to enter into a body, to enter into an animal soul, to have to work together with an animal soul, and then to live life. And the whole point of it is that we should interact with physical life and connect every single moment of life as much as possible with a mitzvah. A mitzvah brings God down into the world, and whenever we bring into a mitzvah, we allow that entity, that thing within physical life to now allow God to shine through. So when you do a mitzvah and it involves a physical object, and when you do a mitzvah and it involves a part of your body, and when you do a mitzvah and it involves an energy, an output of energy from your animal soul, all of that now is allowing God to shine through in this world. And when we reach a tipping point, that's when we have the coming of Mashiach. And that is why Judaism is so much a religion based around action. The emphasis is on action. You know, other religions have a hard time understanding this about Judaism, because other religions, the most important thing, the emphasis is on belief. What do you believe? Do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? You have to believe in stuff. In Judaism, belief is very important, but it's really secondary. It's not what's most important about the religion. The important thing of Judaism is we got stuff to do today, mitzvahs. There we have it. All that said, the author is going to conclude the chapter on a little discussion about the importance of studying Torah. Because until now, we've been focusing on mitzvahs, practical mitzvahs. We want mitzvahs that involve physical labor. We want mitzvahs that involve bodily activities. And we want mitzvahs that involve physical stuff. Torah study really has none of that. Torah study is much more a mental and spiritual effort. When you study Torah, you're not running around, you're not interacting with the world, you're sitting in one place, and you're actually just trying to focus your mind. It's more mental, more spiritual. It's not engaging the body so much. It's not engaging the animal soul so much. It actually is. We learned about that earlier last week. Torah study does engage the animal soul, but not in the very physical way that we've been describing earlier. And therefore, the author is going to conclude to teach us that despite everything we've learned up until now, that the purpose is to bring God into the physical earth, which is through physical activities. Ultimately, there still is a very important focus on Torah study, and both are important. And we're going to be learning a little bit about the balance, about the tension of priority between action mitzvahs and Torah study in today's class, and it's a beautiful, beautiful teaching. We'll learn all about the greatness of Torah study. That's what we got on the agenda for today. How does that sound? Sounds good? All right, let's get going. We are on page 285. The special energy of Torah. Last week, we learned about one element, one dimension of what makes Torah study so special, and even in a certain way equal, outweighing all the other mitzvahs. Today we're going to learn an additional point. The special energy of Torah. Says the Alter Rebbe, a further quality, which is the most important of all. This is the most important quality of Torah, in which Torah study surpasses all other mitzvahs, can be gleaned from our earlier citation from Tikkunei Zohar. That the 248 positive mitzvahs are the 248 organs or limbs of the king. So if you want to understand what makes Torah study so special, this little quote gives us a clue that all the mitzvahs are the 248 limbs of the king. Now what does that mean? I have limbs, I have a body, I have limbs. What does it mean that God has limbs? Or what does that mean that God's limbs are the mitzvahs? What does that mean? Says the Alter Rebbe, we can understand this by using the analogy of a human being. Look at a human being. There is no comparison or similarity between the life energy found in the body's 248 limbs and the life energy of the brain, which contains the intellect divided into three faculties of Chachma, Bina, and Das. Think about it. What's a limb? I have hands. I have fingers. I have legs. And they have life. There's life in my fingers. They're warm to the touch. I have sensation. I have movement. I have fine motor skills, etc. A limb is just a part of the body. A limb is just a piece of meat. A limb is just a collection of flesh, bone, and connecting tissue, sinew. So my fingers are not alive. My hand is not alive. A limb, rather, is a container. My soul has life. And my soul has functionality. And my soul spreads out throughout my entire body and invests its energy into my limbs. So I have life energy in my fingers. I have life energy in my arms. I have life energy in my feet, etc. Now, here's my question for you. Can you compare the quality, the level of my soul's life energy that's found in my toes versus the life energy that's found in my fingers? Are they the same life energy? On the one hand, they're the same because they're both life. But on the certain hand, no. My toes, how much of my life is found in my toes? Not much. What can I do with my toes? I could wiggle them. What else can I do with my toes? I can't think with them. I can't feel with them. I can't feel emotions with them. I can't even draw a nice picture with them. I don't even have any fine motor skills. There's very little life, so to speak, found in my toes. I have a lot of life in my fingers, a lot more life, etc. But then compare all the limbs, and the Torah tells us there are 248 limbs of the human body. Okay, how we come to that number is not for now. But let's compare the life energy that's found in the limbs to the life energy found in the brain, in the mind. We all understand you can't even compare. The life energy in every other part of my body, in the limbs, have sensation, have some life, but the depth and the quality and the amount of energy that's found in the brain, you can't even compare. So, yes, the brain and the whole body contains my life's energy, but my brain contains a whole different depth and quality of life energy than any other part of the body. Says the Alter Rebbe, that's the metaphor. What's the analogy of this? Continues the Alter Rebbe, so too, in a figurative sense, we can apply this to God, though yet with an infinite and unbridgeable distinction. Okay, so we're going to use this as an analogy, although the Alter is saying, you can't even begin to compare these. Okay, but we're going to go with it. The divine infinite light that is invested in practical mitzvahs is far less intense than the light invested in the Chachma, Bina, and Das, within the Torah wisdom that each person comprehends, each according to their unique way of learning and level of comprehension. When you do a mitzvah, you're getting God's life. You're getting energy from God. The same way your life extends into your limbs, when you have a mitzvah, you're getting some of God's energy. But when you understand Torah, you're getting so much of a deeper quality of God's energy. Just like your brain contains so much deeper and greater life energy than your limbs, so too the Torah you study, the Torah you bring into you, has so much of a deeper and greater quality of God's light than any mitzvah does. Because a mitzvah is like a limb, and Torah is like God's mind, God's brain. And this is what makes Torah study so special. Because if you want to bring such a great depth, such a connection to God, Torah study has that depth. No other mitzvah has this depth. Depth of connection. Oh, but the Alter right away says, but 1 second. When I study Torah, very often, sometimes you learn stuff in Torah and they're so spiritual and they're so godly, you really feel the godly energy within the Torah. Like when you study Tanya. Tanya has a very spiritual teachings. And you feel the holiness, you feel the intensity of the holiness and the godliness and the spirituality within Tanya. But very often, usually when you learn Torah, you're learning Talmud, you're learning Halacha, even the weekly Torah portion, it doesn't feel very spiritual. It's very down to earth. It's speaking about, even this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is the Parsha of Mishpatim. It's laws. It's civil law. It's criminal law. It's very down to earth. What happens if one man hits another man, kills him by mistake? Come on. It's not, it doesn't feel very spiritual over here. You're telling me that there's a greater intensity of God's light in Torah more than mitzvahs? But come on. This is not very inspiring stuff. Says the Alter, but it doesn't matter. Let's read. Bottom page 285. Now, even though when you study Torah, you very often only grasp the Torah in its physical expression, right? You're only getting the most physical expression of Torah. But nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, even on that level, Torah completely contains its divine light. As our sages teach, Torah is compared to water that descends undiluted from a higher level to a lower one, as we learned earlier. You see, Torah, no matter what level you are understanding and grasping Torah, the divinity is there in Torah on every single level equally. It's one of the powerful things of Torah. It's like water. Water descends from a high place to a low place. That's the way water works. Falls from the heavens, comes down to the earth. But the way Torah descends is not like the way, for example, light descends. The sun is very high up, and we get sunlight. There's a very big difference between light descending and water descending. When light descends, you have a loss, right? The further the light extends, further away from its source, the more compromised the energy, the light, the vibrance of that light is. But by water, is the water at the top of Niagara Falls has a greater quality than the water on the bottom of Niagara Falls? No, the water itself, it's the same water, just on a lower level. So too Torah, even though there's some Torah that's, Kabbalah, very spiritual, very godly. And then there's a way the Torah comes down to even speak about, the most brute, down-to-earth cases. Very unspiritual. It's like water. Even on the lowest level, Torah fully contains this divinity. So what the author is saying is, this is very special about Torah. There's a certain inner connection, a certain godly light that you could bring into yourself that only Torah could give that to you. A certain depth, a certain power, a certain intensity to the energy that we could get from God. That only comes through learning Torah. Mitzvahs don't have that depth of the energy as Torah does. This is why Torah study is a great thing. And this is the reason why our sages tell us that a priority for a Jew, even over other mitzvahs sometimes, is to study Torah. Because you just can't compare. You just can't compare. If I could tell you, work very hard, but you'll make $10. Or I could tell you, work very hard, you make $1,000. It's not rocket science, right? If you have the option where to invest your energy, there's a greater return. Torah, there's an unbelievable return. The energy of God that you are able to bring into yourself through studying Torah is unbelievable. Oh. But even so, and here we get to a very critical part of the chapter. Page 286, the tension of priority. But even so, we don't always say, what? Study Torah, don't do any mitzvahs. We don't say that. At the end of the day, Judaism does put a tremendous emphasis on mitzvahs, even over Torah. Let's read. Yet, despite these unique virtues of Torah study that we've just learned today, and we also learned some last week, despite these unique virtues of Torah study, our sages said the most important thing is not study, but practical observance. As special as Torah study is, ultimately the most important thing is practical mitzvahs. And the Torah itself says regarding the mitzvahs, do them today. What does it mean? The Torah says, the verse in the Torah, do them today. What does that mean? Meaning that today, in the lifetime, in the physical world, the priority is to do them, the practical mitzvahs. Ultimately, priority today goes to mitzvahs. And indeed, this is the law. And indeed, the law is that Torah study must be stopped to carry out a practical mitzvah in an instance when nobody else can do it. Think about it. You're studying Torah. Studying Torah is one of the greatest things you could do. But then an opportunity arises for a mitzvah. And the buck stops by you. It's your opportunity. No one else is going to do it if you don't do it. Do you say, listen, I'm doing the most important thing in the world right now. I'm studying Torah. I get the greatest return on investment from studying Torah. You want me now to stop learning Torah to do a mitzvah? No, Torah is greater. But the law is no. If no one else is going to do it, you got to do it. So, for example, most mitzvahs, no one could do them for you. Can somebody else eat matzah for you? No, it doesn't work that way. So you need to stop learning Torah and eat matzah on Passover, even though Torah study in a certain way is greater than matzah. Why is that? This explains the Alter Rebbe. The reason for this focus on the practical mitzvahs, despite the greatness of Torah study, is because ultimately the entire purpose of man and the reason why you were created and why your soul came down into this world is specifically to make a home for God in the lowest realms, to transform darkness to light, so that God's presence will fill specifically this physical earth. That's the whole point, the physical. And all flesh will see God together, as we learned above. Torah study is wonderful, and it gives a greater return on investment. But that's not the purpose. That's not what you're here for. You're here to engage with the physical world and transform it. Transform that darkness to light. Bring God here onto earth. So even though Torah is so great, at the end of the day, the purpose is we got to be doing mitzvahs. But at the same time, as much as we could find opportunities to study Torah, we have to prioritize studying Torah. You see? But page 287, here's a big but. Page 287, here's the other side of the coin. However, this is not the law when there is somebody else to do the practical mitzvah. Oh, what if you're studying Torah and you could do a mitzvah, but also somebody else could do the mitzvah? And the other person is not studying Torah. In such a case, Torah study must not be stopped. In such a case, pass on the baton. Say, okay, no, you do the mitzvah. I'm going to continue studying. Why? This remains the law, even though the entire Torah is essentially nothing other than the clarification of the practical mitzvahs. The Torah is teaching you how to do a mitzvah. So why would we say, no, learn, don't do the mitzvah? Nevertheless, the sages taught that in this instance, studying takes precedence. If somebody else will do the mitzvah, you should prioritize learning. Why? This is because Torah embodies the chachma, bina, and dat of God's infinite light. You're getting the greater intensity. You're getting God's mind through Torah. When you engage in Torah study, you draw upon yourself the infinite light of God with infinitely more intensity and illumination than the light that is drawn through the mitzvahs, which are the limbs of the king. Because at the end of the day, mitzvahs have to get done. But if somebody else is going to do the mitzvah, you prioritize Torah study. Because Torah study gives you the greater gift of connection to God. Which means like this. The way to think about it is, for the purpose, mitzvahs are more important. But for your soul, Torah study is more powerful. Understand? So that's the tension here. Mitzvahs have to happen. Even though mitzvahs may not be the best use of your time for your soul. So for your own selfish bond with God, Torah study is greater. But we're not here to just selfishly feed our souls. We are here on a mission to make the world holier. So we do mitzvahs. But if a mitzvah is going to get done anyways, and we don't have to be the one doing it, okay, then prioritize Torah study. And the Alter Rebbe concludes this section. This is what Rav Sheshet said, a sage in the Talmud. Rejoice, O my soul, for you I have studied Scripture. For you I have studied Mishnah, as is explained at length elsewhere. Right. Look at what Rav Sheish has to say. He's studying scripture, Torah. He's studying Mishnah. He says, my soul, I'm doing it for you. That's interesting. Why didn't he say, rejoice, my soul, I'm putting on tefillin? Because at the end of the day, what's most special for the soul is Torah study. Torah study is most important for the soul. But the mitzvahs is where the purpose is. So we need to focus on the mitzvahs. See, here the Alter is leaving us with an idea that we need to realize that, yes, the purpose is all about mitzvahs. But Torah study, there still is a certain unique element, a unique dimension to Torah study, which makes it very, very important. And we can't neglect that. So the Alter wants us to realize we have to be holding on to both ends at the same time. Mitzvahs is where it's all at, but we have to realize that Torah study is one of the most important activities for a Jew. For this reason. Okay. How are we doing? It's very interesting. The Rebbe invoked this concept, especially in the 50s, when the Rebbe was trying to encourage, first of all, his Chassidim, but in general, world Jewry, to look out for Jews, especially after the Holocaust. There were so many lost Jews who weren't being raised with Jewish education. And there was encouraging Jews, find Jews, reach out to them, teach them Aleph Beis, get them involved in Judaism. But Jews would say, I've got my own life to worry about. I can't worry about that to teach other Jews Torah. I need to learn Torah myself. You want me to teach other people? And the Rebbe said, but this is a mitzvah that nobody else could do. There are so many Jews that need. You can't say somebody else will do it. No one else is going to do it. We need every hand on deck. The Rebbe would say you have to even sacrifice your own spirituality. You have to sacrifice your own Torah study. This is a mitzvah that no one else could do. You need to go do it. Okay. Bottom 287, we're going to conclude the chapter with a final unique element of Torah study. The author is going to take us even further. Another uniqueness to Torah study. Page 287, the special closeness through Torah. Let's read. Now, when you study Torah, you draw down this illumination of God's infinite light upon your soul and upon the root of all the souls of Israel. Okay, this is interesting. The Alter is bringing this in. I'm not sure why the Alter is bringing this in, but the Alter is saying, not only do you bring this special energy and light of Torah upon yourself, but whenever even one Jew studies Torah, he brings that light upon all Jews, upon the root of all the souls of Israel. This root is called the Shekhinah, the Knesset Yisrael, the source of all Jewish souls, as will be explained below. Okay, we'll get to these terms in chapter 41. What does it mean? There's the source, the root of all the Jews, Knesset Yisrael, the Shekhinah. We'll be talking about that soon. But right now, that says you bring it upon yourself and you bring it upon others. Okay, now, this unique illumination, which comes exclusively through Torah study, is called in Hebrew Kriya, as in the phrase Korei Bat Torah. He reads the Torah. Okay, Kriya. The Kriya is the word we use when it comes to reading or studying Torah. It's also the word we use when we speak about reading the Torah in Shul on Shabbos. Kriyat HaTorah, reading the Torah. Now, it sounds just like, it's just a name. It's just a term, you read the Torah, big deal. But the word Kriya is a very critical word over here. The author says, you want to understand what is unique. What is the unique bond that you make with God when you study Torah? It's the bond of Kriya. What's the bond of Kriya? Well, Kriya in Hebrew means reading, like reading Torah. But listen to this, it also means calling out. So when you study Torah, and the unique bond you make with God through studying Torah is the bond of calling out to God. What does that mean? Let's continue reading. Page 288, fascinating idea. Kriya literally means calling. So Korei Bat Torah means that through studying Torah, you call God, so to speak, to come to you. You call out to God to come to you. So Korei Bat Torah can mean reading the Torah, or it can mean calling out to God through the Torah. And the Alter explains, it is like a man calling to his friend to come to him, or like a small boy calling to his father to come to him, calling to be united with him, and not to separate from him, and remain alone, God forbid. Very, very interesting. There's an idea of calling to somebody and asking them to come to you for no purpose other than just to be close. When a kid calls from college to their mom, finally calls up their mom from college, are they calling just to say hi? No. They're probably calling because, well, you didn't call me in 3 months. What happened? Right? Probably the funds are low, right? That's how it works. So they're not calling mom. They're calling the money. You just don't know. There's no direct line to money, so you got to. Mom is is she's customer service for the money. That's how you get money. No, but then there's another. So you could call. I don't mean that in a bad way. Even in a good way. There's a way of calling somebody, but there's a purpose here. You're trying to get something. You're trying to even closeness. I want closeness. Even that's something. Or you need help. But then there's something else where you want somebody and you call them to come to you for no other purpose than I just want to be united with you and I don't want to be separate from you. I don't want to be alone from you. My daughter Shayna, she's very emotionally expressive. It's very beautiful to see it in a little girl, just turned 6 years old. So whenever I leave home, I don't leave home for long times. I don't look to leave the house, but sometimes I leave to speak, to go somewhere, a little trip. So I'll be, I'll leave for an hour and a half. I'll leave for a day and a half. And very often when I come back, my little daughter Shayna, she comes over to me and she hugs me very tight and she says, "Tati, I'm never letting go. Don't ever leave me again. I'm never letting go of you." It's like very beautiful for a little girl to and she gives a tight squeeze and she expresses that. Now, was there a problem? Did she feel lonely over the past few days? No. Everything was good. Mushki was there, right? Her mom was there. Everything is good. I just want to be, I don't want to be alone from you. I just want you to be with me. There's something very pure about that. What the Alter Rebbe says is, yes, we call out to God. Even doing a mitzvah is calling out to God. We're bringing God closer to us. When we pray, we're calling out to God. But Torah study has a very strong value. It's the pure calling out to God. Nothing else in Judaism brings us that close to God. Continues the Alter Rebbe. This is the meaning of the verse. God is close to all those who call to him, to all those who call him in truth. This is a verse in the Ashrei prayer, which is a staple of the Jewish prayer. Let's just read it carefully. God is close to all those who call to him, to all those who call him in truth. You see this? There's two clauses. There's calling to God, and then there's calling to him in truth. You see, there's two levels of calling. So what's the level of calling which is in truth? Let's continue reading. What is in truth? And the Alter Rebbe quotes the words of our sages from the Talmud. Truth refers to nothing other than Torah. Truth is Torah. In other words, when the verse says that God is close to those who call to him, it is specifically a calling to God via the Torah. The truthful calling to God is the calling through Torah. This excludes someone who calls to him not via the Torah, and he merely cries out in prayer, Father, Father. You see? Prayer is different. In prayer, we're directly speaking to God, but we're asking for something. We're asking for our needs. We're even asking for spiritual closeness. God, I want to be close with you. But even that is utilitarian. Even that's for a purpose. It's not saying, God, I just want to be close with you. It's different. There's a difference between calling to somebody and asking for a need, even if it's a spiritual need, versus just pulling close saying, I just want to be in your company. It's a different thing. Torah is the purest form of closeness with God. It is in reference to this that the prophet bemoans. There's no one who calls you by name. There's no one who calls by your name. Prophet Isaiah. The prophet is complaining. The Jews stopped calling to God by his name. What does it mean? Meaning God is being called in prayer, but not by his name, which is the Torah, as is explained elsewhere. Oh, Jews were praying. Jews were doing mitzvahs, but they weren't invested in studying Torah. He says, look, Jews stopped calling out to God properly. So Torah study has a very unique element of a certain closeness, a certain intimate bond that only Torah study gives to a Jew, and no other part of Judaism gives that closeness as Torah study does. And the Alter Rebbe concludes with these ideas. An intelligent person can meditate to generate a feeling of immense reverence when studying Torah, the importance of which was explained above in chapter 23. There you have it. Think about these ideas of how great Torah study is and inspire yourself about the awesomeness and just about how much reverence we should feel when we're sitting down to study Torah. This is an awesome moment. This is the closest I could get to God. This is the ultimate closeness by studying Torah. And dear friends, that's chapter 37. Okay, a little bit of a shorter class today. But dear friends, we just concluded, chapter 37 is the biggest chapter in Tanya. We've spent 5 classes on this chapter. It's a big chapter. The next big topic is chapter 38, 39, and 40. Till now we spoke about the very practical effect that mitzvahs have on the spiritual world. Now we're going to go to the total flip side. The spiritual effect that mitzvahs have on our spirituality, especially when we invest our own spirituality into the mitzvah with good emotions, passions into the mitzvah, and the kavanah, the mental and emotional investment that we put into a mitzvah. But dear friends, it's going to be very deep parts of Tanya. Chapter 38, 39, and 40 is going to be it's going to demand a lot of our attention, a lot of our determination. So buckle up. Yes, Joel.
All right, so my question is this. Normally, as I understand it, when you study Torah, you do it together with a group of people and discuss it. That's supposed to be the best way. When you are studying Torah alone and it's mostly in your mind, are you supposed to be moving your lips or as an action or reading it semi aloud as you're doing it? Is that the proper way? Or
Yeah. You're supposed to speak the words of Torah. As we say in the Shema prayer, V'dibarta bam, and you shall speak these words. You have to literally say them. So now, so there's an idea of reading it with your mouth, and then sometimes you need to think through it. So when you think through it, you're very often going to do that without speaking it out loud. But when you're reading it, sing it out loud.
Sometimes when you're reading it and you're trying to understand it, your lips automatically move, but maybe a sound doesn't come out.
So the best is if the sound comes out. But yeah,
better if the
levels. Yeah. So when I sit down to study,
words,
I try to get myself into it by reading it aloud.
The words need to come out and be spoken. That's what you're saying?
Right. The different elements, the different requirements of the mitzvah of Torah study. There's understanding it, there's knowing it, there's spending time on it, and there's also speaking it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Leah, yes.
So last week you talked about tzedakah and Torah study, but this week you didn't mention tzedakah at all. So is tzedakah included in the mitzvot then?
Yeah.
Okay, because you were so specific on that.
Yeah. So within all the mitzvahs, tzedakah is something which makes it stand out very unique. And then from the perspective of Torah study, there's a greatness of Torah study that even outweighs tzedakah. And from this perspective, tzedakah is equal to the other mitzvahs. So it all depends about which element we're looking to talk about.
What you're saying is that charity and Torah were talked about equally, but Torah really is more important than all of them.
Right. But from a different perspective, tzedakah is more important than all of them.
That's right. So but the Torah is telling you that the mitzvahs are more, that is made up of all these mitzvahs. So
exactly. So,
it's mutual beneficial.
The point over here is not to tell you, okay, stop doing this and start doing that. We're still doing everything. The point is to give us a deeper appreciation and to help us understand the different elements of Yiddishkeit.